I didn't plan revenge. I planned survival. The first time my boss insulted me in front of everyone, it felt less like a punch and more like a spotlight. Hot, silent, merciless. He didn't yell. He smiled when he said it, which made it worse. Maybe next time you'll read the brief before you embarrass the rest of us, he told me, with that fake chuckle people use when they want to humiliate you but still sound civilized. Everyone laughed, or at least pretended to. I remember how the sound echoed off the glass walls of the conference room. That was insult number 1. I didn't know I'd start counting them, but I did. Every time it happened, I wrote it down in a little notes app folder titled For HR. At first, it was a coping thing. Later, it became evidence. And by the time I reached 20, that list had become something else entirely, a roadmap to his downfall. My boss's name was Cal. 43, polished, the kind of man who carried a Mont Blanc pen like it was an accessory to his ego. He ran the enterprise accounts division at a mid-sized software company that serviced big clients, banks, telecoms, anyone with too much bureaucracy to notice slow corruption. My title was Senior Account Manager, which meant I did the work while Cal took the credit. We had one flagship client that kept the lights on, a $2 million a year contract with a global logistics firm. Everyone called it the whale. Cal called it my account, even though I handled 90% of the deliverables. He loved hierarchy, loved the sound of his own voice filling the gaps between PowerPoint slides. He'd interrupt me mid-sentence in client meetings just to restate what I'd said, only louder, slower, and wrong. The kind of wrong that makes you question your sanity. That was insult number 2. Don't worry, folks. He means the actual SLA, not whatever he read on Wikipedia last night. The room had laughed. I'd smiled like it didn't hurt. It did. HR called him high-performing, demanding. They said, "You just need to toughen up." I didn't realize then that HR worked for him, not for me. So I started counting. Number 3, in the hallway, after a quarterly review, try dressing like someone who deserves a client-facing job. Number 4, during a team stand-up. If you ever speak that slowly to a client again, I'll start billing them by the minute. Number 5, Slack message, public channel, 11:07 a.m. Can someone explain why my junior's asking me about project timelines? Each one chipped away a little more of who I was. The worst part wasn't even the words. It was how casual they became. Like breathing to him, like cruelty was a reflex. He'd stroll into my cubicle with his coffee, scan my monitor, and say, "Still here," like my presence offended him. He called me kid even though I was 34. Once, in front of the client's procurement lead, he told a story about how I used to cry over rejection emails. I hadn't. He made it up. It wasn't the first lie he told about me, and it wouldn't be the last. I tried to quit once around insult number 10. I typed out a resignation email and deleted it 5 times. Rent, insurance, student loans, they kept me silent. Survival, not pride, ruled my choices. Then came something strange, a small bureaucratic favor that would later turn into a loaded gun. Cal called me into his office one Friday, tossed a stack of documents on the desk, and said, "I need you to sign this delegation form. When I travel, you'll have limited sign authority for client admin stuff. No real power, just paperwork," he laughed. "Think of it as babysitting the inbox while the adults are away." I signed it because I didn't care. Back then, it meant nothing. Later, it meant everything. The insults didn't stop. They just got more creative. He mocked my accent once during a lunch meeting. He joked that my MBA must have come from a vending machine. He told the intern I was what happens when effort meets mediocrity. I still remember the intern's face. He didn't laugh. That's when I realized something. Cal's cruelty didn't impress people. It exhausted them. And exhaustion is fertile soil for rebellion. By the time we hit insult number 15, the office was split. Half the team feared him. The other half tolerated him. I was the only one still trying to do the job right. The whale account was slipping, KPIs missed, tickets unresolved, a brewing client escalation that Cal kept burying. When the client's VP operations finally demanded a live review, Cal panicked. He told me, "You'll take the heat if this goes south," and smiled like it was a joke. Then he pulled me aside and whispered, "You're replaceable, kid. Don't ever forget who owns this account." That line, "Who owns this account?" lodged in my skull like a splinter, because ownership wasn't about authority. It was about responsibility. He wanted the first and dodged the second. So I started building my own quiet ownership. Documentation, email trails, version histories, call notes. Proof that the success of his account lived entirely in my files. When HR brushed me off the second time, I stopped seeking help. I stopped hoping for fairness. Instead, I waited. The turning point came on a Tuesday morning, 4 months after insult 1. The client requested a value review, a polite term for "we're about to fire you if things don't improve." Cal brushed it off. "They'll renew. They always do." But I'd heard something in the client's tone that he hadn't. Finality. And somewhere between insult number 19 and that phone call, something inside me snapped into focus. I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to make sure that the next time Cal called me kid, he'd be saying it from the unemployment line. By the time the year hit mid-spring, I had stopped counting insults out loud. The list lived quietly in my phone, a gallery of degradation, each entry stamped with a date, time, and a few bitter words. But Cal hadn't stopped. If anything, he'd grown louder, sharper, more deliberate. He had this new habit, standing behind my desk while I was on client calls, arms folded, smiling that predator's smile. He never said a word during the calls. He waited until I hung up. Then, in that same smooth tone that made people mistake him for calm, he'd whisper, "You really think they trust you? I can hear it in their voice. They don't." That was insult text 11. I wrote it down, even though by then the words barely registered. Our department had become a machine built on fear. Cal thrived in that ecosystem. His method was simple: break people just enough that they still produce. He'd brag about his attrition to efficiency ratio, as if bleeding out good employees made him leaner. HR nodded along because his numbers were perfect on paper. The whale account had turned volatile. The client's dashboards were red across the board. Uptime violations, delayed patch releases, and missing security reports. I knew why. Cal was sandbagging. He deliberately delayed deliverables to push premium support upgrades. He could later claim credit for closing. The difference between hitting the SLA and missing it by an hour meant he could sell another $50K in critical escalation coverage. Every time I raised it, he'd spin it into an insult. "If you were half as good at client management as you are at excuses, we wouldn't need upsells." That was the Max Frontobelv. But behind his sarcasm, something else was happening. Something bigger. The client was getting tired. Their VP operations, a sharp, blunt woman named Lauren, began copying procurement on every message. That's the corporate equivalent of cocking a gun. I knew the playbook. Once procurement enters, you're no longer managing a relationship. You're negotiating a survival clause. Still, Cal acted invincible. He ignored the red flags, forwarded me incomplete meeting notes, and forgot to share critical bug reports that affected our KPIs. I started saving everything, not on the company drive, but in encrypted archives with metadata intact. Times, dates, who was CC'd, who wasn't. I didn't plan to use it yet, but I knew the day would come. One afternoon, he called me into a meeting room under the pretense of coaching. Inside, the blinds were drawn. He motioned for me to sit and said, "You've been underperforming." I asked him to show me the data. He smirked. "You want data? Here's some data. Everyone on this floor knows you're the weakest link." He paused for effect. "And I don't fire weak links. I replace them quietly." That line, "replace them quietly," felt like a countdown. He wanted me rattled. Instead, I started studying. I pulled every clause of the Master Service Agreement, MSA, for the whale account, line by line. Somewhere in there had to be something he'd missed. And there it was, buried in Section 14.3, a value assurance review clause, a client's right to request a competitive rebid if service quality failed to meet contractual metrics for 2 consecutive quarters. The catch? It could only be initiated through formal client request or internal compliance escalation. Cal thought the client would never risk it. Too political, too messy. But I knew Lauren. She wasn't political. She was tired. I started keeping late hours, not to catch up on work, but to map every system dependency the whale relied on. Security, billing, engineering handoffs, ticket flow. If the client ever asked for transparency, I'd be ready to deliver the truth. Clean, provable, and devastating. That's when Cal's paranoia kicked in. He began accidentally deleting CRM entries, contact logs, meeting summaries, and sometimes even entire deal records. He'd call it maintenance. I called it what it was, evidence control. He once pulled up my presentation slides 10 minutes before a client meeting and said, "These are garbage," then replaced my name on the cover with his. Insult number 13 wasn't even verbal. It was a delete key. At the next team review, he joked about my accent again. "Don't worry, guys, he's just translating from whatever language he dreams in." That one earned nervous laughter. 14. I remember leaving the conference room that day and feeling nothing. Not rage, not shame, just a kind of clarity that only hits you after too much humiliation. That night, around 11:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was an email from Lauren, the client VP. The subject line was blunt. "We need to talk before renewal." We got on a call the next morning. She didn't waste time. "We're considering triggering the value assurance clause. I know Cal hates surprises, but our CFO's lost patience. If we do this, can you walk us through what the process looks like internally?" My throat went dry. She wasn't asking. She was warning me. I told her I'd need to confirm with compliance. She said, "Do that. Off the record, I'd prefer you handle it, not Cal." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't tell anyone. But the next morning, when Cal mocked my overthinking during a stand-up meeting, I added insults 15 to the list and smiled for the first time in weeks. He noticed. "Something funny?" he sneered. "Just thinking about process documentation," I said. He rolled his eyes. "God, you're tedious." That was number 16. What he didn't know was that I'd already sent an internal memo to compliance, phrased clinically, "Client X has expressed potential interest in invoking Section 14.3 for value assurance review, requesting procedural confirmation on response protocol." By lunchtime, legal had replied, "If initiated by the client in writing, proceed via standard rebid process under procurement oversight. Ensure all communication is transparent and recorded." That was all I needed. Not revenge, not power. Just permission. 2 weeks later, Cal's calendar flashed with a new event. Leadership Offsite, Denver, 3 days. I saw the email chain. He'd included me on CC, writing, "OP will cover operational admin under delegation form signed earlier. Don't burn the place down." He thought it was a joke. He didn't realize it was his signature on the form that would give me full signing authority for the whale's review process while he was gone. I closed the email, opened my notes app, scrolled to the bottom of the insult list. April 17, pending. And this time it wouldn't end with a note. It would end with a signature. The morning after Cal's plane took off felt like silence after a thunderstorm. Heavy, watchful, waiting to see if the sky would split again. For the first time in months, no one was pacing behind my desk. No one was throwing verbal knives across the open floor. Just the soft hum of monitors, the faint hiss of the espresso machine, and my own heartbeat trying to remember what peace sounded like. But I didn't trust the silence. Silence is what comes before movement. By noon, I had my plan in motion. It started with a call I wasn't supposed to make. "Lauren," I said quietly when she picked up. "I figured you'd call," she replied. Is he gone? 3 days. Good, we're ready. There it was. The sentence that split the wall, clean down the middle. The client had already drafted their intent letter, a formal notice to trigger the value assurance clause. All they needed was acknowledgement from our side to begin the process. Normally, that would go straight to Cal, but he was 30,000 feet in the air, sipping bourbon and telling someone on LinkedIn about his leadership philosophies. And me? I was holding a pen with his delegated signature authority at the bottom of the form he'd mocked me into signing weeks ago. I reread the compliance reply one more time. If initiated by the client in writing, proceed via standard rebid process under procurement oversight. Ensure all communication is transparent and recorded. Perfect. No loopholes. No mutiny. Everything above board. I hit reply all. CC'd legal and procurement and wrote acknowledged. Initiating value assurance process. Per clause 14.3. Timeline and documentation to follow. The moment I hit send, my fingers trembled. The sound of the email whooshing out of my outbox was the sound of a fuse being lit. Within 10 minutes, I had 3 meeting invites on my calendar: legal, finance, and delivery. None of them questioned the authority. Cal's delegation covered everything. In the system, I was now the account owner for compliance purposes. A temporary title, but powerful enough. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just sat there, feeling the edges of adrenaline creep up my arms. The next 48 hours blurred. I built a small task force, the kind of people who'd spent months cleaning up Cal's messes quietly. There was Mia, from finance, who'd once stayed until midnight, fixing a billing error he caused. There was Dev, our lead solutions architect, who Cal routinely called the intern whisperer. And there was Kira from support, who had the patience of a saint and the inbox of a war medic. When I told them what the client was doing, they didn't panic. They looked relieved. So we're rebidding his contract? Mia asked. I nodded. Ours now, Kira smiled faintly. Guess Karma needed a project manager. That line stuck with me. We had 72 hours to produce what Cal hadn't done in a year, a renewal proposal that actually matched the client's expectations. Not fluff, not buzzwords. Proof. Phase 1. Clean the rot. We went through every deliverable Cal had closed. Out of 32, 11 were mislabeled complete. 5 were duplicates. 2 had never existed. Dev swore under his breath. He's been faking progress reports. Keep going, I said. Document everything. Phase 2. Rebuild the truth. We wrote a new statement of work from scratch, aligning every metric to a measurable client outcome. Not vanity KPIs, but things that mattered. Uptime, cost reduction, transparency. I pulled direct quotes from Lauren's previous feedback emails, word for word. When you use someone's own language, you don't need to sell them. You just remind them what they already said. Phase 3. Make it impossible to undo. Every email was CC'd to legal, every version stored in our compliance archive, every change logged in SharePoint with timestamp and user ID. There would be no "you acted without authorization." I made sure of it. By the second night, the office lights were off except ours. It was 11:42 p.m., and we were running on vending machine coffee in sheer defiance. Do you think he'll find out? Kira asked, not looking up from her laptop. He will, I said, but not soon enough. I checked my phone. No messages from Cal. He was probably too busy tweeting about mindful leadership from a hotel bar. Still, paranoia clawed at me. I imagined him storming back early, bursting through the glass doors, seeing our screens. But fear had long ago burned out. All that remained was focus. When I finally left the office that night, the janitor nodded at me. Long day? He asked. Long year? I said. On the final morning of the 72-hour deadline, we presented our draft to legal and procurement. The legal director, an older woman named Janice, who'd worked with Cal for years, skimmed the summary and looked up. This is actually good, she said, sounding almost confused. Did Cal do this? I met her eyes. The team did. She gave a slow nod like she understood more than she said. Then make sure the client sees your fingerprints on it. That was all the blessing we needed. I sent the new proposal at 2:07 p.m., a complete rebuild of the whale account contract. Subject line, Revised Value Assurance Proposal. Client X, Outcome-Based Model. Attached were the updated SOW, the Cost Optimization Breakdown, and a KPI dashboard link that updated in real time. No jargon, no fluff, just proof. Lauren replied within 15 minutes. This is the first time I've seen exactly what we asked for. We'll move this forward immediately. Thank you. 3 sentences. That was all. But it felt like oxygen. At 5:32 p.m., I was closing my laptop when the final message came in. Forwarded from legal. Client X acknowledges revised proposal as compliant and will proceed with internal award review. Effective dot pending. The phrase, proceed with award review, was corporate language for you just won. I sat there alone in the half-dark, staring at those words. It hit me all at once. I hadn't outsmarted Cal. I'd simply removed him from a process he never truly controlled. The system didn't care who was clever or cruel. It cared who followed the rules. And for once, the rules were on my side. I packed my bag slowly, almost ceremonially. On my phone, the Notes app was still open. The insult ledger. I scrolled to the bottom and typed, Box 17. He left me the keys and told me not to burn the place down. Then I added a new line beneath it, the first one not numbered. Status. Fire lit. The week Cal left felt unreal. Like the air itself was lighter but charged with static, as if the walls knew something was about to shift. He'd been gone barely 48 hours, and already the office felt different. No one whispered, no one flinched when Slack pinged. You could hear laughter again, small, cautious, but real. For the first time in months, I wasn't managing around fear. I was managing work. By Monday morning, legal had confirmed what I'd already known. The client's value assurance review was officially recognized. The internal system updated, reassigning temporary ownership of the whale account to me. My name, my responsibility, my signature, and technically Cal's delegation form still sat in the compliance database. He had no idea that his own arrogance had written my permission slip. I called a meeting, just 4 people. Closed door, no PowerPoint, no hierarchy, just a plan. Mia from finance sat across from me, tapping her pen like a metronome. We're doing this for real, she said quietly. Yes, I said, and it needs to be perfect. Dev, the solutions architect, cracked his knuckles. Perfect I can do? Ethical? Not always. Stay ethical, I said. That's what makes it bulletproof. The strategy was simple in theory, brutal in execution. We would rebuild the entire account infrastructure from the ground up, architecture, billing, client communication, compliance, and make it transparent. So transparent that even Cal couldn't claim ownership once he returned. It had to look not like rebellion, but restoration. We set up base in conference room D, a forgotten glass cube near the elevators, always freezing, always empty. I wrote 3 words on the whiteboard, proof, precision, permanence. That became our code. Every email, every file name, every metric, traceable and irrefutable. Dev handled the technical side. You know he's been faking uptime metrics, right? He said. Look. He pulled up the server logs, timestamps edited manually, records patched to show false success. He's been logging uptime from internal test servers instead of production. Looks good on paper. Doesn't exist in reality. Kira, from support, shook her head. That's months of fraud. Not if we fix it before it's audited, I said. We don't expose it. We correct it. That was the balance I had to hold. Revenge without blood. Correction, not chaos. While they built data transparency, I worked on the narrative. Corporate battles aren't won with emotion, they're won with documentation. Every decision I made had a memo. Every memo had a timestamp. When I wasn't writing, I was listening to the office, to the tone of people's voices when they realized they could talk freely again. It felt like thawing after a long freeze. By midweek, word spread that Cal's team was producing the best proposal the company had ever seen. Executives stopped by just to check progress, but their curiosity turned into quiet admiration. Even HR, the same department that once told me to toughen up, dropped by to ask if I needed extra resources. I almost laughed. Late one night, as I sat alone reviewing the financial appendix, Dev walked in holding a USB drive. "You're going to want to see this," he said. He plugged it in and opened a folder titled Cal's Sandbox. Inside, hundreds of archived PDFs, expense reports, bonus statements, and something worse, shadow invoices to a consulting firm that didn't exist. The payee, his cousin's LLC, the amounts, exactly 3% of every client upsell. Kickbacks. Documented, time-stamped, undeniable. I stared at the screen until the room stopped breathing. "You sure this is real?" I asked. Dev nodded. I checked the metadata. He's been using fake vendor billing to pad his commissions. For years. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't shock I felt. It was confirmation. I'd always known the arrogance had a reason. Power without accountability always hides a rot. "Don't leak it," I said. "Not yet. Just make sure it's archived." That Thursday, I received an unexpected Teams ping. It was from Cal. "Cal, 9:14 p.m. How's my kingdom holding up? Don't make me clean up a mess when I'm back." "ME, 9:15 p.m. All stable, client happy, enjoy the offsite." "KL, 9:16 p.m. Client's always happy when I'm not there to babysit you. Try not to embarrass us." Insult, number 118. Remote, but recorded. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled to the client's feedback dashboard. Green. For the first time in a year, everything was green. Friday morning, we ran the final simulation of the new proposal. Kira presented the updated escalation workflow. Mia reviewed cost savings. Dev demoed the live metrics dashboard that the client could access anytime. When we finished, the room went silent. Not from tension, but from something else. Disbelief. We'd just outperformed a man who'd spent years convincing everyone that we couldn't function without him. Mia broke the silence first. "Do you realize this could change everything?" I nodded. "It already has." We sent the full submission to legal and the client by 5:01 p.m. Sharp. Lauren replied 2 hours later. "Received. Reviewing. Whatever happens next, thank you for actually listening." 5 words burned into my mind. Whatever happens next. That night, I walked home under the dull glow of streetlights, exhausted but strangely calm. I didn't feel like a hero. Heroes make noise. I was just cleaning the mess left behind by a man who mistook volume for leadership. Still, I couldn't sleep. At 1:30 a.m., I opened my notes app again. Leibemacher 18. Clients always happy when I'm not there to babysit you. Then below it, 19. Pending. Because I knew it was coming. The final insult. The one that would end the count. I didn't know when or how. But it would come, and when it did, I'd be ready. On Sunday night, just before Cal's flight landed, the client's official decision hit my inbox. Subject: Award decision. Client X Value Assurance Review. I didn't open it yet. I just stared at the bold text, the unread notification glowing like a fuse tip. Then I smiled. Small, private, quiet. Because no matter what was inside that email, I'd already won something Cal could never reclaim. The respect of people who finally saw who did the real work. And I had the receipts to prove it. Cal landed Monday morning. The office knew before I did. His footsteps were a storm you could hear before it hit. Loud, fast, too confident for someone who'd been gone 3 days. He always returned like a man expecting applause. The interns straightened in their chairs. Slack channels went quiet. The temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. and then his voice cut through the air. "Where's my team?" "Not our team. My. Always my." I didn't look up when he passed my desk. I just said, "Good morning." He smirked. "Heard you had fun playing boss. Don't get used to it." That was insult number 19. He walked into his glass-walled office, tossed his suitcase onto the floor, and immediately started scrolling through his inbox. I watched him through the reflection of my monitor. The color drained from his face within seconds. He saw the threads. The client's review, legal's approvals, procurement's oversight. His name wasn't on a single one of them. He leaned back, squinting at the screen like he was trying to read a language he'd forgotten. Then, at 10:17 a.m., a message popped into the leadership Slack channel, the one with all the directors and department heads. "Cal, FYI, while I was away, my junior decided to pretend he runs enterprise accounts. Cute. Don't worry, folks. I'll fix it once I'm done laughing." And there it was, the last one. Insult number 20. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because 3 minutes later, legal did. Janice, legal director. Cal, to clarify, the value assurance process was initiated by the client per clause 14.3. OP acted within the authority delegated under your signed coverage form. Deliverables have been submitted and approved. The entire channel went silent. Then someone from finance reacted with a single emoji. Cal typed, paused, deleted, typed again, stopped. I could almost hear his pulse from across the room. He stormed out of his office, eyes locked on me. "You went behind my back." "No," I said, calm. "I followed process." "You stole my account." "You assigned it to me." I turned my monitor so he could see the PDF, the delegation form, his own signature at the bottom. For a second, I thought he'd actually hit me, His jaw flexed, his hand curled around the chair's edge. But then he saw the people watching, dozens of them, the same people he'd belittled for years. So instead, he laughed, the kind of laugh that tries to rewrite reality. "Enjoy your little fantasy, kid. When I'm done with you, there won't be a desk left for you to hide behind." I met his eyes. "You said that last quarter." That afternoon, the email I'd refused to open during the weekend finally became public. From Client X Procurement. Subject: Award confirmation, outcome-based renewal. Message: effective immediately, we award the $2 million value assurance renewal to your revised proposal. Thank you for your transparency and commitment. Future communications should be directed to OP, account owner. 2 sentences, $2 million. The thread exploded. "Congrats! Incredible turnaround! Didn't think we'd keep the whale." Even senior leadership jumped in. VP of Sales. "Great work, OP. Excellent recovery under pressure." Cal didn't react. He sat frozen, staring at the monitor as the congratulations scrolled past him, his name absent from every one of them. When he finally spoke, it wasn't loud. It was low and venomous. "You think this saves you?" he said. "I made this company. You're a guest in something I built." I looked at him and said, "Then consider this a remodel." At 3:42 p.m., compliance pinged me. "Need you and Cal in conference room B for a 4 p.m. meeting. Bring documentation." The timing wasn't mine. It was gravity. I printed everything: the insult ledger, redacted for HR, the version histories, the email chain showing every deliverable Cal falsified. Dev sent me a secure drive with the fake invoices. Mia printed the finance audit trail. When we walked into the room, Janice from legal was already there. HR sat beside her, expressionless. Cal strolled in late, muttering about witch hunts. Janice began without preamble. "We've reviewed multiple irregularities in the whale account. We also received the client's communication praising OP's leadership and flagging inconsistencies in prior reports." Cal smirked. "Client politics. They'll say anything." "Then how do you explain these?" she said, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were his cousin's invoices, time-stamped with his approval signature. His smirk cracked. "That's not... It's your login, your timestamp, your transaction ID." For the first time since I'd met him, Cal didn't have words. Janice closed the folder gently. Effective immediately. You are placed on administrative leave pending full audit review. He looked at me, not with fury, with disbelief, as if the universe had betrayed him. You did this, he whispered. No, I said quietly. You did. That evening, after security escorted him out, I sat in the same conference room alone. The adrenaline had drained away, leaving only silence and the low hum of the AC. I opened my phone. The Notes app glowed. It's 20. Cute. Don't worry, folks. I'll fix it once I'm done laughing. Below it, I added one last line. Status. Complete. Then I scrolled to the top of the list and reread every entry. Every jab, every humiliation, every quiet moment I'd bitten my tongue. 20 lines that had once defined my shame. Now they read like milestones. Each insult had been a brick. Together, they'd built the wall that buried him. When I left the building that night, the city lights shimmered against the glass facade. The same reflection I'd once stared into while wondering if I should quit. Now the same reflection showed something else. A man who had survived a storm by documenting the rain. Tomorrow, the company would send an email announcing leadership restructuring. HR would use words like integrity and alignment with core values. But I didn't care about titles. All I cared about was one simple fact. I hadn't fought back by shouting louder. I'd fought back by letting the truth speak in full sentences. And the truth never yells. It just waits for the right moment to be read aloud. 3 weeks after Cal's last insult, the company announced his departure in a single paragraph. Effective immediately, we have mutually agreed to part ways with Cal Robertson, Director of Enterprise Accounts. We thank him for his contributions and wish him success in his future endeavors. No one believed the mutual part. Everyone knew what had happened. By noon, the story had already spread. The internal audit, the fake invoices, the client's formal complaint. But no one said his name out loud. In corporate culture, disgrace moves silently. It doesn't echo, it just fades. He didn't even come back for his things. Security boxed up his office. They found 3 empty bottles in his bottom drawer and a photo of him shaking hands with the CEO, framed like an award. They gave me that office the next day. I didn't move in right away. For a while, I just stood in the doorway, staring at the empty desk where so many of his words had cut me down. The sunlight caught the faint outline of his nameplate on the glass. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. The promotion came 2 weeks later. Director of Client Solutions. Same title he'd held, but cleaner. Transparent. Earned. When HR told me, I didn't smile. I just asked for a condition. Give me his team. They hesitated. You want to manage the same people who's... Yes, I said. They deserve to know what real leadership feels like. That was the first time I used the word leadership without sarcasm. My first act was to rebuild trust. No slogans. No fake pep talks. Just one rule. No one gets humiliated for doing their job. I erased the performance dashboards Cal used to weaponize. I replaced them with feedback forms. Anonymous, open, brutal. The results were honest. People were burned out, angry, but relieved. One line stood out. I didn't realize how quiet real work could feel. That became my North Star. The client, the whale, sent a handwritten note a week after the contract was finalized. Lauren had signed it herself. In 20 years of procurement, I've never seen someone take responsibility so cleanly. Your proposal didn't just win the contract, it restored our faith in yours. It sat pinned above my monitor for months, not as a trophy, but as proof that decency still had market value. One afternoon, as I was leaving for the day, Janice from legal stopped me by the elevator. Thought you should know, she said. The audit's finished. Cal's case is being referred to outside counsel. I nodded. So it's official. She tilted her head. You could have leaked it yourself, you know. Taken the glory. Not my kind of victory, I said. She smiled, the quiet kind that means respect, not politeness. You're going to do fine here. The doors closed before I could answer. A few days later, I finally deleted the folder named for HR. The insult ledger, the screenshots, the voice notes, all of it. It had served its purpose. Keeping it would have been like keeping a wound unhealed. But before deleting, I opened it one last time. 20 entries. 20 moments where I'd been made to feel small. And the note at the bottom, the one I'd added the night he fell. Status: complete. I highlighted the whole document, pressed delete, and watched it vanish. The sound of the trash bin emptying was quieter than I expected, almost peaceful. In the months that followed, things changed fast. The team doubled its clients' satisfaction scores. Revenue climbed. HR quietly rolled out new policies on managerial conduct. Rumor said Cal's audit had triggered the update. Some nights, when the building emptied out, I'd sit by the window of that glass office, my office now, and look down at the city lights. I'd think about the people who'd watched it all happen in silence. The ones who'd smiled when Cal mocked me. The ones who'd looked away. I didn't blame them anymore. Fear makes cowards of all of us. I knew that better than anyone. One evening, close to midnight, I received a message from an unknown number. You happy now? No name, but I didn't need one. I stared at it for a while, then typed back, I'm at peace. That's better. No reply. None ever came. The next morning, I arrived early and unlocked the office while the lights were still dim. The walls reflected my own silhouette. Calm, steady, unremarkable. I thought back to the first insult, the first time I'd felt my voice shake under his, how powerless I'd felt, how angry I'd been at myself for staying. And then I realized I hadn't stayed to suffer. I'd stayed to finish the story properly. Revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about rebuilding what they tried to break. I poured a coffee, opened the window blinds, and let the sunlight fill the room. On my monitor, the client dashboard flickered green. Uptime, delivery, satisfaction, all perfect. For the first time in my career, I wasn't checking the numbers to prove I belonged. I was checking them because they were mine. I opened a new document. No title yet. Just the first line. Sometimes the loudest victories are the quietest exits. I didn't know if it would be a story, a speech, or just a memory. But I knew one thing for certain. The man who once counted insults now counted results. The same 20 that broke him had built the foundation for everything that came next. And in the silence of that office, surrounded by the hum of servers and the steady pulse of his own calm, he smiled. Not because he'd won, but because he'd finally stopped fighting.